This is the Sabbath School lesson for the second quarter, 2021.
Lesson 8 for May 15 to 21, Covenant Law, and read by Dr. Percy Harrold. Friday, May 21. How does Matthew 22, verses 34 to 40, help us better understand 1. The place and meaning of God's law within his covenant, and 2. The concept that covenant is synonymous with relationship? Matthew 22, beginning at verse 34. But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. Then one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him and saying, "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?" Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbour as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." On page 484 of Volume 5 of the Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary we read, "There must first be love in the heart before a person can, in the strength and by the grace of Christ, begin to observe the precepts of the law," as we read in Romans chapter 8, verses 3 and 4. "For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God did by sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh on account of sin. He condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteous requirement of the law might be fulfilled in us who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit." And continuing, "Obedience without love is as impossible as it is worthless. But where love is present, a person will automatically set out to order his life in harmony with the will of God as expressed in his commandments." End of quote. And then from the book The Acts of the Apostles, page 505, we read, "In the precepts of his holy law, God has given a perfect rule of life, and he has declared that until the close of time, this law, unchanged in a single jot or tittle, is to maintain its claim upon human beings. Christ came to magnify the law and make it honourable. He showed that it is based upon the broad foundation of love to God and love to man, and that obedience to its precepts comprises the whole duty of man. In his own life, he gave an example of obedience to the law of God. In the Sermon on the Mount, he showed how its requirements extend beyond the outward acts and take cognizance of the thoughts and intents of the heart." End of quote. And that brings us to our 3 discussion questions for this week. 1. Why does the thread of love exert a stronger pull than the rope of fear to draw human beings to God? 2. Why is the command in Matthew 22:34 to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind the first and greatest commandment? And 3. Simone Weil once wrote that order is the first need of all. How do you understand her words in the context of the week's study, particularly in relation to the idea of law? And to summarize this week's lesson, God's law was an integral part of the covenant, yet it was a true covenant of grace. Grace, however, never nullifies the need for law. On the contrary, law is a means by which grace is manifested and expressed in the lives of those who receive grace. Inside Story. Our story today is titled Unexplainable Hospital Visit by Andrew McChesney of Adventist Mission, and once again it contains Dr. Hernando Diaz. In Medellin, Colombia, Hernando Diaz stepped out of the hospital to rest. He had spent the past 2 hours with his son Samuel as the boy's blood was cleaned by a dialysis machine with an artificial kidney. His wife, Erica, was now sitting with the boy for the last 2 hours of hemodialysis. Hernando collapsed onto a bench near a water fountain, and he turned on a sermon on his cell phone. Moments later, a stranger walked up and asked whether he could sit on the bench. Hernando nodded, listening to the sermon over the cell phone speaker. The stranger's own cell phone rang. "I've decided to kill myself," the stranger angrily told the caller. "I haven't been able to find work for 2 years, and I don't want to live. Don't call me." As he spoke, he seemed to forget Hernando on the bench, but when he hung up, he came back to reality. The sermon caught his attention. "Is that a Christian preacher?" he asked. "Yes, he is," Hernando said. "I heard that you want to take your life." "Yes, that is what I want to do," the man said. "I cannot bear it any more." "I don't think that it is a coincidence that you sat with me," Hernando said. "You need help." "Would you like help?" "Yes, I would like help." "What do you do?" "I'm an accountant, and I have a family that I can't support." "If someone told you, 'I can help you and supply your needs and give you hope for a better future,' would you accept it?" "Of course." Hernando spoke about Jesus, and the man gave his heart to Jesus on the spot. Hernando encouraged him to send out his resume with faith. The next day, Hernando sat on the same bench and saw the man looking for him. "Guess what?" the man said. "Someone called with a job offer. I feel great." Hernando praised God and curiously asked whom he had visited at the hospital the previous day. The man said he didn't know anyone in the hospital. "Yesterday I felt an irresistible urge to come to the hospital," he said. "I sat next to you because I didn't know what to do." Hernando, a Seventh-day Adventist physician at the Adventist Medical Center on the campus of Columbia Adventist University in Medellin, has many similar stories. During the past 5 years, more than 100 people have changed their minds about committing suicide after praying with him. They now are living normal lives, he said. This quarter's 13th Sabbath offering will help open a missionary training centre at Columbia Adventist University. This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. It's supported by the Sabbath School Department and Hope Channel Australia and is rebroadcast by Christian Record Services and through podcasts at It Is Written in the United States, Hope Channel Germany, and through Apple iTunes and SoundCloud. Remember, God is always faithful.